So welcome everyone to this launch, well, sort of a launch, a reading, we'll call it a reading, with three friends from Canada and one from New York. We're happy to welcome you all here. Thanks for coming out on this cold and rainy night. And those of you who are at home, thanks for joining us virtually. So my name is Greg Newton. I'm the co-founder with my partner, Donnie Jokum, of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, which is this very space. The Bureau, we like to say, is a government agency for a government that does not yet exist. And this is the service that we provide, holding this space for queer culture. So we're an all-volunteer organization. I have Hal Lance helping me out tonight. We have Kyle, another longtime volunteer who's here in the audience. So we depend upon our volunteers, sales, and donations to keep this project afloat. So we do have a suggested donation of $10, and I'm going to pass around a bag. But give what you can if you're able to. And if money is tight and you are looking to buy books, please hold on to your money and buy books from that. That's a great way to support us as well, and our authors. So I'll pass this around. If you're not on our email list and you would like to be, you can sign up for that at the back of the room, and you'll get an email every other Monday about our many upcoming events. And tonight, I am at last starting to do a land acknowledgement, something we've been meaning to do for a long time, but I've been waiting until we had an organization that we were going to partner with. But with Canadians here who are much better than we are at land acknowledgements, I felt inspired to get off my ass and at least make a stab at it. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We are actively seeking to partner with and provide material support to a local queer Indigenous organization. We hope to make an announcement about this partnership in the near future. But in the meantime, we encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community Houses Mannahatta Fund. So the Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native people who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. The people who inhabited this land at the time of European arrival, including the Munsee Lenape, Canarsie, Rockaway, Wappinger, Manhattan, Regawanick, Unkachog, Matanakak, Haudenosaunee, doing my best here, and more were brutally annihilated, assimilated, or displaced altogether to create European-led settlements and government. The violence of colonization is ongoing, even while millions of Native people follow in the footsteps of their ancestors to repair and restore their communities. Native survival in the face of such violence and loss requires community, and for 52 years, the American Indian Community House has been a lifeline for the estimated 111,000 Native people living in New York City. Acting as an intertribal hub for our metropolitan region, AICH provides health and wellness services, cultural events, community, and a voice for Indigenous peoples. 100% of all Mannahatta Fund donations go directly to the American Indian Community House. So you can find out more information at mannahattafund.org. And with that, I'm going to introduce our first reader. So Eli Tareq El Bechelany-Lynch is a writer living in Tiohtià, which is the Indigenous term for Montreal. Their work has appeared in the Best Canadian Poetry 2018 anthology, the New Quarterly, Arc Poetry magazine, and elsewhere. They were longlisted for the CBC Poetry Prize in 2019. Their book, Not Body, published by Metatron Press, was shortlisted for the QWF Concordia First Book Award, and their second book, The Good Arabs, was published by Metonymy Press in September 2021 and received the honorary mention for the Arab American Book Award for Poetry. They are the nonfiction editor at the Puritan. They are also an acquisitions editor at Metonymy Press. They are currently translating Gabrielle Bouillon-Tremblay's La Fille d'elle-même from the French, forthcoming fall 2023. With co-editor Samia Marshi, they are editing El Ghuraba, an anthology of weird and experimental queer and trans writing by Arab and Arabophone writers. Please welcome Eli.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out. Thank you to the online watchers. I didn't realize my bio was so long. Sorry about that. Been trying to pare them down so that they're more interesting to people and less long. But that didn't happen for anyone here. Sorry. So I'm going to be reading mostly poems from my book, The Good Arabs, which is at the back. And I think maybe one new poem. So I'm going to start with a poem called Nancy Ajla Mike. And for those who don't know, she's a famous Lebanese pop star. Nancy Ajla Mike. يا سلام يا سلام قدي حلو الغرام يا سلام يا سلام قدي حلو الغرام. Could be a woman, could be a man, could be someone floating in between or somewhere else, someone in a different country, on a different plane, different part of Earth's tectonic plates, a space right between two of them, two men sharing a bed, but no one knows, a shattering. Earthquakes so normal, we all know the drill, know to keep the good plates strapped in, know that sometimes you wake up to shaking, wake up to floating, those minutes in between sleep and the shake endless, until they're not. You're up and out of the apartment, your pants still hang between your legs. Pull them up, running down the stairs, hoping no one sees, but someone always does. Could be a woman, could be a man. You never know with this language. Never know when Arabic holds an inherent femininity between her lips, between the shut eyes and the breathy ahs. Men's mouths filled with feminized verbs, thrown around like hot pita. The air between the bread swelling, held at the end of fingertips, hot, crisp, and swollen. Cousins, aunts, uncles yelling one end of this long table to the other, voices mingling in one loud white noise, passing plates back and forth, throwing balls of hot pita, bottles of bira. Before gender still sunk deep into her language, into hugs, kissing between men, the woman's hand resting on another woman's cheek, leaning deeply, looking gently, the moon's wing haunts vast desert nights, the glimmer of the sand sparkling in the light cast, nomadic peoples moving, tectonic plates jerking. I release my femininity in Arabic, move with a body unseen in English. Like every time Nancy Ajlam comes on, I get up, wriggle my hips and summon my preteen body, writhing to the sounds of the road, my eyes closing as Nancy's voice guides me into the crowd of my family, pulling my cousins into dance, raising my arms, twisting my hips, and emulating Nancy belly dancing in her music video, a shake of the hip for every achasnak, hand twist, hip shake, la. All right, so the next one is not from the book. I'm kind of trying to work right now with language dealing with something that is missing, a kind of void. And this one's called Comfortably Numb, which, yes, is a Pink Floyd song, but it's not related to that. And someone told me, are you sure you want to pick that name? And I said, yes, I don't care. So you can also think about Pink Floyd if you want. Consider your state of ambivalence. It is outside your field of vision, outside your field of consideration. It is ultimately of the utmost importance. It is ultimately not important at all. The wave of shock that runs through every cell of your body, up and down your arms, is uncontrollable. The time it takes you to control yourself is picking a fight and looking at it from the outside. The body is either hesitant or not, present or not. The waves that lap underneath your skin are agitated. Warm, a late spring breeze, walking in the sun for too long. Hesitancy has never gotten you anywhere, but neither has fighting. Your diplomacy is as instinctual as drinking, and you drink a lot of water. This makes you enter and exit the bathroom often, disrupting your thinking. You can't think while you pee, too focused on the sound. Your mind goes blank. What are you feeling inside? A blank, unfilling, a relief. Further investigation brings you nowhere because you're unwilling to do it. The battle within you is deep and old. The tear is only a flesh wound. A scar is thick, fibrous tissue lapping at your skin. She tells you the skin of the scar is not like the skin of the rest of the body. It's just a quick fix. She pushes at your scars, rubs, scratches, caresses and wisps and tingles. She burns, she numbs. She reminds you where your nipples are. The faint pain reminds you of something else, but you can't reach it. She tries to help you find it, but she doesn't know what she's looking for. You won't say. She asks, should I touch here or here? You say, you think it's all numb. Yes, all numb. Oh no, wait. So the next poem is from the book. And basically the book, The Good Arabs, talks about a lot of things, kind of thinks about the idea of the good Arab and what it means and what a bad Arab is, and but then also investigates the garbage crisis in Lebanon. And I got like really interested in garbage. And then when I got interested in garbage, I also got interested in shit. And so there's a lot of like garbage poems and a lot of poems about shit in this book. And as I was like going through trying to pick, I was like, oh, here, oh, there it is again. Like I always forget, and then as I'm calling back through, they keep coming up. So this one kind of follows the theme of being about shit. So this is not a poem. In this new poem, there are no words. You might think there are words in this poem because you're reading the words you think you see, but I promise you, there are no words at all. No phrases, not one sentence. There isn't an image of forgetting. Grab your wallet when you leave the house or when you feel absurd for trying to tell your mother that you're a poly. She says, does your partner know? Imagine you cheating on your partner and then telling your mother casually, sticking your fingernails, you're gorging on the everything of your desires. So maybe this is not a poem after all. Not the confessional you might have expected. The fat around the pork makes its way through the small spaces between your teeth as you continue to suck and chew. It is tasty. It is not a poem, but an indulgence you are working on, turning the pork into small enough pieces so it can make its way successfully through you to be made into shit and get on its way out. But the fattiness of the pork is your most basic pleasure in this mouth. So you don't open your mouth or say any words. And like this poem, not poem, your mouth is not a poetic installation, but the chewing is decadence. You have always been a slow eater, and so you sit at the table as your parents become impatient. Your sister leaving the table first, then your mother, then with a sigh, your father. Do not leave before you finish everything on your plate. But you don't want the broccoli, only the fat of the pork, and you're stubborn, and so you sit, moving food around, not in a poem, but at the table, in the kitchen, and pick at the broccoli, and chew slowly, slowly, until he says, get up and brush your teeth and go to bed. In poems, there's often this moment of reveal, but in this, nothing is revealed, not a poem, nor a moment of sinking into your chair. Those moments are left out with the shit and the pork, unlike the ones filled with fat and leaking over the edge. You say not this time and hold it all in, until overfilled, you push it all out. And when she asks you why you always have stomach aches, you shrug and answer her, this is not a poem. I forgot my book, of course, in Montreal. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna screenshot things, but they're all like in black and white. So it makes it hard to find things. I think this will be my last one. It's called Salt Bruises. I'm sick of immigrant stories is what I hear on a loop, and a voice that growls out of the body of the white man in the workshop into, I am sick of immigrant stories. I am sick. I am sick. I am sick. The little girl in the story searches for bruises for meaning. When they are purple, she looks up to the sky to match. When they are pink, the first reminder of morphing, no longer a girl, but something else, disgendered, home left with little scars, not immigrant, but a secretion, a mother's body filled with memory passed over, a sickness of lineage, of reaching across borders, ward the bruises she wears under her clothes all folded up. I am a fish, a mermaid swimming against waves, forcing me up, pushing down. I'm inhaling seawater, but clutching at home, breath tight, depths full of lung, working through immigrant. I'm working through where I'm a body, not of water, expansive, but of flesh, bone, and seasick. I'm anything but a welt, a yellow bruise. When we think of a bruise, imagine someone all beat up. But between the four walls of a home, what happens when we blame the immigrant, looking for holes in their body? We knew all along it was the other that was deeply sick. He is sick. We are the ones sporting the bruise. We look up, but home is not here. For the immigrant, home is only a body of water, a salt-weathered body. I repeat to myself over the sounds. It drowns the words out. No longer a sickness. My limbs release. A fading bruise. Blood starts cycling. Fresh sea air works its way through my lungs. I touch ocean, salt water, cedar trees, gardenia. But home? My grandmother mixing spices, smell of thyme and nutmeg, coriander, cloves, blending into home. Machewe cooking on the small barbecue on her balcony. The Levant fan-fingered gecko scaling the stone walls behind her. Immersing a migration, its steady escalation. I'm sorry to leave you on a bummer.
Thank you, Eli. Our next reader, H. Felix Chau Bradley, is the author of Personal Attention Roleplay, which was a finalist for the Danuta Gleed Literary Award and the Kobo Rakuten Emerging Writer Prize, as well as the poetry chapbook Automatic Object Lessons. They are the fiction editor for This magazine and the host of Strange Futures, a speculative fiction book club. They live in Tiohtià, Montréal. Please welcome Felix.
Okay, Greg. Yeah, thank you to the Bureau for having us and to all the volunteers who make the space run. It's my first time reading in New York, so thank you for all being here. So it's a Lunar New Year on Sunday, and in the spirit of that, I'm going to read something new that's not in the book, but I think that the tone is not so different from the stories in the book that you'll be very disappointed if you do end up buying it. And also there happens to be sort of a Chinese astrology reference in this story. It's about to be the year of the rabbit. Okay. So this is part of a story called Life Inside the Sky that I've been working on. As a child, I refused to eat anything but the blandest colored foods because in the city where we lived, the sky was never blue. The sky was a dirty mop on most days. On some days, if you stared hard, it might have shifted to the mop water's gray slurry. Our apartment was on the 47th story of a tower that was built the year before I was born. To get to the ground and the rest of the city, you had to descend quickly through a narrow, transparent shaft, gravity lurching out of you through the stomach as you traveled downward through the colorless air. I accepted this, though it made digesting breakfast difficult. Elsewhere, I had read, the sky varied in color and mood from season to season, even from hour to hour. People would look to the sky for predictions. They would blame their moods on the quality of blue, the richness of oranges and reds, the turbulence of the dark gray, or the malevolent yellow of an approaching storm. It even affected their dreams. I could picture these hues. It wasn't that we lived in a world devoid of them. It was just that they didn't exist in the air. The air swallowed us in its indifference. The air, which was also the sky, did nothing to differentiate itself from itself, except to darken at night, which at least gave a grounding rhythm to our existence and permitted sleep. Has it always been this way? I asked my father, who usually had a ready answer for anything I could put to him. And did he prefer to visit places where the sky was blue, purple, orange, and red? He looked at me blankly. Though he had traveled widely for his work as a sleep specialist, he had nothing to say about the quality of our sky's light spectrum. I wondered if this was because he was only concerned with what people saw while they were sleeping, looking inward rather than outward. Eat your carrots, he said to me sternly. They're good for your eyes. I wrapped my legs around the cool metal rungs of the kitchen chair and squirmed. I couldn't bring myself to close my teeth around the bright orange sticks, which my father liked to eat, with their green fronds still attached like hair. His astrological sign was the rabbit, so his proclivity was hardly surprising. The rabbit was the luckiest of the 12 signs. I didn't know if my father was lucky enough to see a technicolor sky. Was the sky elsewhere orange like a knobby green-haired carrot? It might be maroon or purple like the lab-grown varieties that he liked to buy at the hypermarket down below on the way home from his own lab. He even tried to grow these on our balcony in brittle plastic containers that he drilled drainage holes into and lined with small pebbles. Every summer he tried to grow carrots, but either the containers he'd chosen were too shallow or the seeds were simply too old. Seeds were becoming hard to obtain. I had done a homework assignment about the Svalbard seed bank being in peril due to the melting permafrost and hadn't slept for several nights. I didn't dare tell my father about this for fear of his explosive reaction. One year, a squirrel had emerged impossibly from the expanse of white air to dig the bright vegetables up precisely when they were starting to become recognizable. My father was furious. He was always furious about his failures. How could it be that he could win research awards for redirecting the breathing patterns and REM cycles of his patients, and yet fail to grow a simple crop of one of the world's most common vegetables? Because his gaze was so often directed downward to the containers and their failure to produce carrots, he had nothing to tell me about the sky. I asked him if the lack of blue was responsible for the stunted vegetables he kept ripping out of the soil in disappointment. You read too much fiction, he said. You think that there is an intentional narrative arc for everything, when in fact there is no reason why these carrots should not grow, no reason at all, other than my bad luck. Of course, this was a strange pronouncement for a scientist to make, superstitious and unconcerned with cause and effect. My mother often said that my father was stuck between two worlds due to his work in sleep research, in which scientific method and painstakingly controlled studies overlapped with the inexplicable world of dreams. My mother didn't care if I only ate bland colored food. She said it was easier to prepare and serve meals of white rice, pickled quail eggs, oatmeal, potatoes, white asparagus, halibut, onions, lychee, canned water chestnuts, and chicken breast than to bother with the rest of it. She emerged from the elevator every evening, her contours vague and smudged from her work as a Cantonese court translator. She preferred not to have to make any decisions before collapsing into bed. Sometimes she brought home a tub of vanilla ice cream that she and I would share, sitting side by side on the couch, sitting on opposite sides of the couch with the television blank before us. How can you two sit there like that, watching nothing? My father would grip the back of the couch in frustration. Isn't there anything on? We would shrug. There was ample room for him to sit down between us, but he never did. Sometimes I went to my friend Carlo's apartment after school. I had met her at our Towers recreational group after school hours. We'd soon decided that we'd rather hang out with each other than with the other kids who made fun of us for being weird. Carlo and I knew that being weird was the only acceptable way to live, and we disparaged the other children, who all seemed to dress exactly like their parents. At Carlo's, the TV was always on, usually daytime soaps that she knew all the intricate plots to. Plots that unfolded glacially, each day within the world of the show, taking almost a whole season to spool out on screen. On Friday, a heated conversation that had begun the previous Monday between one of the main couples might start to reach an explosive conclusion, only to be cut short yet again by the rolling credits. Carlo's favorite character was Lucinda, who was constantly cheating on or about to cheat on her wealthy husband, Federico. Each time, a devastating breakup would unfurl comfortingly over the course of an entire summer and fall. Enough time for carrots to grow and be harvested, I thought, in places where the sky was sometimes blue. These shows never showed the sky. The dramas and intrigues only ever took place in sumptuously decorated rooms, in creamy lighting with heavy curtains either drawn or letting only the slightest hint of natural light through. The stars' faces were filmy and blurred, the faces of people who, like me, had never been bathed in the light of a clear blue sky. Do the people you treat see the color of the sky in their dreams? I asked my father one morning. I was curious, but my main goal was to interrupt a silent fight that he and my mother were having. It involved moving around the small kitchen at different speeds, picking up various items before clanking them back down on surfaces, opening the fridge with loud jolts and closing it over and over without making any eye contact. He refused to eat my mother's and my regular breakfast of congee with blanched nuts. He ate jam on thick slices of black pumpernickel toast, the bright red fruit slowly globbing onto his plate. If I looked at it too long, it might ooze its way into my own mouth. To my surprise, he paused in his jam swallowing and looked thoughtful for a moment before replying that no one had mentioned the sky, though people often had nightmares about plane crashes, bird attacks, or falling out of high buildings. Could you ask them? I begged, eyeing my mother, who had also paused to the left of my elbow. I knew he wouldn't ask, just like he wouldn't call me by the name I wanted, and he wouldn't accept that I wear anything but the pale purple high-waisted dress to his research chair award ceremony, 47 floors down and 15 city blocks away. Count yourself lucky, he would always repeat in these moments. You inherit it from your mother, whose luck got her here to the city back before you were born. The island where she grew up was dangerous and no good, and her family was always trying to escape. One day she was crying alone on a wharf in the harbor, and she was whisked away on the back of a whale who had taken pity on her. After swimming for many days, the whale dropped her on the shore of this city, where she learned the language in 1 week and then met me. This was just one version of my mother's early life that he told. He told these stories cyclically. The whale version came before the typhoon version and after the version that involved pirates and mutiny, which is the one I liked best, even though my mother was a passive bystander to all the action. For a year when I was 9, I only read books about revolts aboard ships, imagining myself in the hero's role. I liked these small revolutions, which usually resulted in many deaths of sympathetic sailors before the powerful and corrupt captain and his loyal first mate were vanquished, tied to the mast, or thrown overboard. I'll stop there.
Felix. Our next reader, River Halen, is an award-winning transgender writer of Catalan and Danish descent, living in Tiohtià, Montréal, all the same place. Their poems and essays dealing with relation, ecology, transformation, and sexuality have been published widely in Canada, as well as in the US, Australia, and in translation in Japan. Their first book, Match, was shortlisted for the Trillium Book Award for Poetry, and their most recent book, Dream Rooms, a collection of essays and poems, is praised by the Bay Area Reporter as unique and mesmerizing. Please welcome River.
Thank you so much, Greg, and thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We're going to do this one thing. Maybe just going to change the angle. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's picking me up. Okay. So I'm going to read from my book Dream Rooms, which came out in the fall. Dream Rooms is a mixed collection of poems and essays that I wrote mostly in the years leading up to my coming out as trans, and that is, I guess, largely about different ways of not knowing things and the state of not knowing and ways to be in relationship to unknown things and also what that does to minor details of reality, or attention on minor details of reality. I'm going to start with part of an essay, I guess, and then read some poems. The essay, it's the last piece of the book, and it's called The Full Impulse. And it's organized, I guess, around the idea of blankness, or a blank, or kind of a blank page, whether that's a hole in information that's been received, or a page that has yet to be filled, or something you don't know how to read yet. And it brings together several kind of tangentially related threads of information, or avenues of inquiry that you'll see. The Full Impulse. I've decided instead to do the whole dance in public, to show my body moving through some positions. I'm not doing this to overwrite the blank. It's still there, around and between the gestures. It's still infinite and important. The Spanish Civil War is called the Spanish Civil War because within one country, two sides fought, and eventually the fascists won and kept power for 39 years. Whereas the Mexican Revolution is called a revolution because when two sides fought, the fascists lost. When Diaz was deposed, dictatorship ended. Frida Kahlo, who was 3 years old at the time, was born again, a revolutionary and a communist. She often lied about her age to convey this truth. She would say she was born in 1910, the year the revolution started, instead of 1907. Once I wanted to explain my complicated terrain of stubble and thickets to a lover, and I overshared. I composed an email titled My Body Hair, a Summary, which contained a list of numbered thoughts. Writing this email was intoxicating, like suddenly unleashing the story of my life. I'm still revising and adding to it, even though I sent it a long time ago and that lover has moved on. Frida Kahlo depicted herself very often in her art. Many of the physical experiences of her life are represented there explicitly. When I see throw cushions printed with photographs of Frida Kahlo for sale in art gallery gift shops next to paperweights of Vincent van Gogh's irises, I think it's unfair that one artist is marketed as a body while the other is marketed as art, because in the same lens that creates this discrepancy, bodies are devalued. And then I remember not to use this lens. When I see rows of Frida Kahlo throw cushions arrayed on a shelf in a store, they appear to me as a kind of army. A lot of interesting things were happening with gender in the Mexican Revolution. For example, if you read about soldaderas, women soldiers, you will learn that some of them went to the front wearing long skirts, whereas some dressed as men and took male names. Some alternated, and some liked their uniform as a man so much they kept it on for the rest of their lives, thereby troubling this category, women soldiers. Meanwhile, since there was no socially sanctioned avenue in that war that I've heard of for, quote, men soldiers to wear skirts or contribute to the cause as women, this type of woman soldier stayed hidden in plain sight, I guess, and is not, to my knowledge, written about. Potentially, everyone was a woman soldier, or no one. This is true of most wars, as well as most peaceful periods in most places in modern history. My body hair, a summary. 1. I got it early, like grade 4. 2. I didn't want it, but I didn't want to remove it either. What I wanted was continued abstinence from the question. I pretended it didn't exist. My Spanish family is not really Spanish, but Catalan. The nation of Spain as a whole, and with it my grandmother on my dad's side, was traumatized by the Civil War, July 1936 to April 1939. My grandmother was 9 when it started and 11 when it ended. Then came the years of dictatorship, during which her language and culture, the names of her eventual children, became illegal. For example, my father named Jordi at birth in secret, instantly became Jorge in public by law. A large portion of this story is lost to me, and although I feel it could be my place to bear witness to the contents of the loss, that's not how loss works. The first time I saw art by Frida Kahlo, I was in high school. My mom took me. The gallery we went to, a 45-minute drive downtown, had 6 or 7 of Frida's paintings on loan and some sketches. The paintings were mostly smaller ones. It was the kind of exhibition that makes you think about the smallness of your city in the world. I don't remember having clear feelings about the paintings of Frida. I was watching carefully to remember the details of the art later when I would know more. And I was watching other people. 3. Kids teased me about my hairy pits. Once or twice they even threatened to kill me for them, which feels absurd to report even now. We went to the water slide park, where I disappeared down long plastic tubes without ever lifting my arms, which was possible. We went to the ocean, where I tried to swim using only forearms, only legs, which was dangerous both socially and physically. When I got home, I shut the door to my room and began to snip my armpit hair with a pair of kids' safety scissors. The shorter my hair got, the more deliberate it looked, my hairiness, like a conscious choice, and the more mortifying. I couldn't make it disappear. The blank begins shortly after my grandmother and her parents baked some money into loaves of bread and dressed up as peasants and fled their home in Barcelona for the mountains. They did this in an effort to hide from both sides. The fascists were opposed to their ethnicity, and the Catalan socialist resistance to their bourgeois status, which abandonment of property did not, by itself, immediately remedy or conceal. There's a story that may or may not be true about them slicing up their palms with knives to appear as though they had been doing hard labor. In that part of the country at that moment, my grandmother asserted once, memorably, because she almost never spoke about the political situation of her past, you could be killed for having smooth hands. But the cuts, if they existed, were not convincing. My grandmother and her family were recognized as the kind of people who might have money in their loaves, and the loaves were taken. I think about the impression they must have made. A family of dispossessed rich people trying to get work on farms and blend in with the other laborers and thinking the key to it all was having scabby hands. Imagine the first time someone asked them to do a task like milking cows or turning compost. There's an angle from which this story of my family's trauma is very funny. My grandmother was at an age when she probably hated her parents. In this case, so did everyone else. They fled from farm to farm, lying and being discovered, until eventually, for a sustained interval, they disappeared. I'm going to stop that one there. This next piece I'm going to read is a poem. In it, at one point, I refer to Mira Bellwether's zine, Fucking Trans Women, which was an enormous influence on my own like self-understanding and life. And yeah, I didn't know her personally, but I was so sorry to hear about her passing this December. Honeymoon. So there was never any pure time. If pure time exists for anyone, I do not know. I think of when you gave me my pet name after you came so hard that afternoon on the rented bed. The month or so when you would say things like, ooh, you like taking your credit card out in front of your friends, power, if I tried to pay, or some sugar in your coffee, power, if I tried to sip, or oh, power, your head hurting you again, if I touched my temple, even or especially in public. And I would blush as if I really were a public utility, lighting up information for others to read. We were on a trip, the purpose of which was getting a copper birth control device extracted from my cervix without paying a lot of money in provincial medical fees. I was moved that you came too. I remember when I got the IUD, I thought it was a freedom. And it was like if you're already living in a mousetrap and someone offers a tiny mousetrap to go inside you, thank you. Why my body, which I understood increasingly was perfect, it had to change. So the cishet sex script, which I'd mostly always known was trash, could continue unmodified, was answerable only in terms of a history I was leaving on a trip with you. Half insane I was to be so into you. I mean, you were unaccountably hot to me in the way that people sometimes are. Our voluptuous affection a risk, our relationship volatile because the thread of it went everywhere, deep into some muscle out again. 9 months after we broke up, I read a zine by Mirabelle Weather called Funking Trans Women. It had a diagram of muffing, which is an act that opens space where none appears to exist through the power of strategic touch. And it was not my body in the diagram, but I understood I needed to perform such acts and have such acts performed on me, that perfection was not a narrow but an incredibly expansive concept involving change, refusal to change, / radical change, / refusal, / alteration and growth in a loop. Between getting off the bus and arriving in the leaf light on a bed at sunset in our Airbnb, a doctor opened me with clear plastic speculum and pulled hard on a thread while I gasped. It did not hurt very much, though I had been braced for something. The initial insertion had involved about 9 seconds of the most blinding pain I'd ever known, beyond what I'd imagined pain could be, the kind of vehicle the rich ride into space just to see what it's like. I remember I was suddenly so sailing I understood leisure and that I could become addicted to the end of pain, to the wash of chemicals pain excites ending, which from the outside looks a lot like being addicted to pain, though the states are distinct. And as I write this, I feel ashamed the outer marker of my pain threshold is represented by a tiny T of twisted copper wire fanning out in me like a margarita umbrella wishbone. I mean, people give birth, for Christ's sakes. People dilate after vaginoplasty. And even me, if I wanted to tell stories about my body, I'm sure I could find a better one. I'm 30-some years old and have lived through some situations, but pain is a very clarifying state in that it removes the outside world entirely and you get to focus on your feeling. I was so completely in my feeling, other people were gone. And so was narrative. Shame was a tiny speck down on the ground. It was the perfect lyric moment. The poem my endorphins wrote for the thread. I keep the syllables close. Would I repeat them? Maybe. Anyway, the removal took about 4 seconds and did not feel like much. And then I got to look at it, my first crush. It was a plastic T with copper wire coiled around as I'd been told, but hadn't yet witnessed. And then suddenly we were exiting the subway station late in comparison to an invisible expectation our Airbnb host had been holding in his head, though we had not promised him anything except that we would be unpredictable for reasons he could not know. Time is funny, those moments you re-enter its tense. He was chilly with an underlying violence. He was hello in an aggression I wished to run from, but we paid. I thought about the question of what the fuck his problem was. It was either too much power or not enough. And the interesting thing was, I had no way of knowing unless I asked, and he replied with the truth, which was not a thing I could imagine happening. How could I access a mind like Mirabelle Weather's? Where was the diagram of how to place my index? What if he was not the real owner at all, just some underpaid guy pretending to own a house in order to comply with a set of rules someone else was profiting from on the internet, and this charade created complications I could not know. Ownership was a lie we complicated by paying rent. We were the problem he could see. We could see him too. It was important to look. The lighting in the rented room was the kind you should never touch. A sunset was threaded crisscross like lasers protecting a work of art. We lay down in it without closing the curtains. You were afraid to touch me because of what I'd just been through. I was afraid to be touched, though I was in no pain at all. Maybe I was scared not of pain, but endorphins, some wires crossed. Anyway, I touched you and stayed partly hidden in my clothes while you opened up slowly to that amazing stupefied state where the minute and the hour and the day are all the same. You have so much power over me right now. I'm going to call you power. If you call me that, you realize I'll have to call you glory. It was a dialogue that happened through our bodies when the veil was thin. We laughed for longer than we probably had earned. Our ignorance of the Lord's Prayer in the novel by Graham Greene had not spared us. There are certain things you can't escape, so just incorporate. Wait for the next lover to take you to a doctor who will pull the thread. After you, I slept with a very feminine man I hadn't previously realized I was attracted to, but it turned out I deeply was. I admit I hoped he was open to trading forms, that if we fucked in just the right way, I could be a very feminine man and he could be whatever kind of ambiguous woman people were constantly mistaking me for. Of course, we never fucked in just the right way. I mean, we did. It was pure and endless. I'm gonna read one last short thing, which is a poem. All these bookmarks, but they don't mean anything anymore. Speech. Annie Edson Taylor was 63 years old when she became the first person to survive Niagara Falls in a barrel, and I was 6 in the carpeted section of the basement, humping a large brown corduroy pillow the length of my torso. It was 1901. Annie had a mattress inside as cushioning. I could not crawl inside my pillow, so for safety wound a skipping rope around it and my body, arms tucked neatly in, yanking the end with my teeth to get it tight. This was important. The river moved swiftly to the edge of my experience, and I went over and over, understanding perfectly pleasure and deadly risk, the falls, how people had died and people kept attempting. I had probably seen a documentary. People speak of becoming famous as a process that begins when you're discovered. Annie was discovered at the bottom of the falls. I was not. The barrel was Annie's retirement plan. She thought it would protect her from poverty, and it is true when she was in the barrel, she was not in poverty. She was inside her lived experience. Later, Annie said she would rather stare straight into a cannon about to blow than go over the falls that way again, but it's impossible to know if she really meant it or if she was just saying what you have to say when you're discovered, what power wants to hear. What power wants to hear is a barrel holds a secret life in a strong current off a cliff, you die, the end. Dying sucked. You sure won't try that again. What power wants to hear is a barrel holds a secret life in a strong current. Oh no, not the end again, that sucks. Try saying it a few more times with feeling. Power likes repetition. Slow repeated motion is the surest way to push her over the edge. Meanwhile, I keep discovering myself, then talking. I have to say what I want to hear when I'm found. I'm becoming more and more well-known. Thank you.
And our final reader, Jeanne Thornton, is the author of Summer Fun, The Black Emerald and the Dream of Dr. Bantam. She is the co-publisher of Instar Books and the editor with Tara Madison Avery of the Ignatz Award-winning We're Still Here, an all-trans comics anthology. Her fiction has appeared in N+1, Wired, The Evergreen Review, and more. Please welcome Jeanne.
So bear with. Okay. But I'll have some patterns, so it'll be cool. First thing I'm going to do is take up the mouse. Thank you all for coming out on a horrible rainy night to be here. I really appreciate this. A thing that I didn't mention in the bio that I want to bring up also, if you're also a fan of going out on other rainy nights, perhaps this is not classy, but we're going to get through it together. I would like to plug the reading series that I have left out of my bio called The World Transform that my co-host Anton Solomon and I do on last Mondays of every month. It is at Franklin Park. It will be on January 30th. We will be speaking to Denny Michelle Norris of Electric Literature. It is an open mic, so you will not hear me read there, but perhaps some of you will read there. I invite everyone to come out and do this if you would like.
It's so good, you should all go.
Yeah. Okay, I want to thank Greg and the Bureau and the volunteers. I did not know that this is the 10th. This is like the 10th year of the Bureau, which is wild. Like, I hate time, like things shouldn't pass. I mean, I don't hate that the Bureau has endured for 10 years. Too. It's even bold. I don't like that. I want to thank the other readers, like River, Felix, and Eli, for inviting me out to this. Eli and I read together virtually, like, it was like 2 years ago, right? Ish.
Yeah.
And we were like, this was fun. One day when the world is different, we should read together in person. And the world is not different, but we made it happen. So thank you all for coming to be part of this. Okay, so I'm going to read to you from a new thing that I just sent a new draft of to my agent today. So if you like it, and if you have publishing power, hit her up. It's called ASL, or age, sex, location, for those familiar with the internet. And I will give you a false choice because no, I'm not going to give you a choice. I'm just going to read. But I will give you a content warning for it. This is set in 1998, I believe, and it is teenagers online, and involves teenagers discovering sexuality with one another online. So, like, if that is an area of sensitivity, please know that that is what is going on. No judgment if you do not wish to know that. Okay. Is this the moment that my e-reader actually broke? Let's find out. I hope not, because otherwise I have to give you more pattern. I don't have any more. No. Are you working? Are you gonna work? Oh my God, you guys, I was so proud of my whole e-reader situation. This is a... Okay. We're gonna reset it. We're all gonna wish together. No, it looks like it's more. Looks like it's gonna work. Okay. Are you gonna work? What is like the Peter Pan thing? It's like you say like, I do believe in fairies.
You clap.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we believe in e-readers? Okay, it's doing the blink, which means it's about to turn off, which is preparatory for it turning on. This is the moment where everybody gives like a shimmer. A spiritual thing. There should be some dots that are going to come up in a second. Here we go. Does everyone believe in e-readers? How many of us believe in e-readers? We need you to say it. We need you to say, I do believe in e-readers. We need you to say it louder. I do believe in e-readers. Do you believe in e-readers? We do believe in e-readers. Look what y'all just did. Thank you so very much. Okay, it'd be really funny and terrible if it didn't work again. It looks like it's going to. Is it? Okay. If it didn't, I tell you what, if it didn't, I will cut and run and I will grab a copy of Summer Fun from the back and I will read you some things from it. If this cannot get work, because I don't want to fool with technology, if this doesn't, but I would like you to get to hear the new thing if you can. Come on.
Someone's belief was not quite.
No, everyone's believers. Showed up for a sec. This is messy, y'all. I was literally reading this in the chat. It was literally. All right. Let's live in mystery. I'll read you from this old canard. Keeps flickering and toying with me. No. Close you so you don't tempt me anymore. Okay. What am I going to read from Summer Fun? Does anybody know this book? Like, do people have like favorite hits they want to shout out? Well, I think I usually have a cutting prepared.
The fight after Thanksgiving.
Ooh, okay. Let me find that. The fight after Thanksgiving.
When they're like driving away from friends' house.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm at the Thanksgiving scene. Okay. I'm going to start during the Thanksgiving meal and then cue. That should be about the right amount of pages, okay? So this is the narrator Gala is hanging out has been invited to Thanksgiving by her friend Rhonda, who has not told her that she's estranged from her family, and they're going to be like going to visit them for the first time. Things have been going fairly badly, and things are starting to generally go well, right? So they're all sort of gathered in the space, dining briefly. So Linda, Rhonda's sister-in-law, had done an intense job on the spread, especially with the not great state of her father-in-law Redacted's oven. There was a turkey which Desi carved inexpertly but assiduously. There were complexly scalloped potatoes, corn souffle, yams baked with pecans, yams baked with marshmallows, fresh clover leaf rolls, and a pumpkin pie that I was sure was sugary, cooling on a black metal burner. Redacted ate as heartily as the rest of us, every so often hitting a button on his insulin pump to top off as if it was a gas tank. The cis people all talk. Redacted and Desi about their work in radio, bizarre audio engineering experiences they had had, Linda and Dino about whether Dino was comfortable, Redacted and Linda about the quality of her food, Desi, Dino about the latter's financial situation, what he was doing or might do to improve it. Rhonda, my friend, kept gazing at them, looking for some scrap of silence in which to speak. I felt angry either with her or for her or both. Gal is all into radio and shit, Des, she said suddenly. The table fell silent and turned to her. Why don't you ask her about the Get Happies, or one of those old person bands? The Get Happies is the Beach Boys-like band that Gala the narrator is obsessed with. She knows all kinds of facts about them. Now the cis people were staring at me. Redacted was the one to break the silence. The Get Happies, he said. What is it you like about them? They have this spiritual quality, I said, blinking as I looked at the table. I guess they sound like America to me. You know, I saw the Get Happies one time, said Redacted. Why don't you tell us about it, Dad? Linda said, disassembling a roll in her father-in-law's plate. It was 1982, maybe 83 it began. Big show in Washington, D.C., a big deal show, 4th of July. They had a bad problem with one of their stacks. Nobody could fix it, but I knew a guy in their road crew, and I was staying there well, and he said, hey, you know Redacted, that bastard, he can fix anything. And I could. So I got the work done. Wasn't anything. They invited me backstage. They were terrible. It was the worst show I ever saw. And I've seen plenty. I mean, no offense to your band. Well, yeah, 1983, that would be terrible, I said. Like, you know, like the lead singer wasn't even with the group then. There was that thing, and I was like, I don't know anything about that. Interrupted Redacted. I just know they couldn't play for shit. A famous band like that, I was thinking, what did I even speak? What's their speaker for? I met them too. I meet a lot of bands working. I like most of them more often than not. I didn't like these men. Nasty people, something real sick about them. He coughed again, and Desi abruptly went back to cutting his meat. Gallo, what is it you do for a living? Linda asked. I work in a hostel, I said, just over in Truth or Consequences. And you're doing that while you're going to school, she said. That's interesting. I'm not going to school, I said. I'm just hard to employ. Redacted looked at me then. You're working, he said. Are you happy? I had no idea how to answer that. I sat there in silence, feeling everything in my stomach, a thick wash of melted butter, cream, evaporated milk, brown sugar, gourds, and sprouts, all that had been given to me freely to keep me alive. If you're not happy, he said to me, get happy, okay? And then he laughed until I joined him. The conversation turned to some construction project Linda was involved in, complex details of which Redacted happily engaged with, while Desi rested his hand on his wife's necklace. Dino dozed and Rhonda kept watching the conversation, smiling, sometimes chewing in. I went to the bathroom again, where I considered putting back the promo seed we had stolen. A complicated plot point that does not come into things here. Actually, no, it does. Okay. It's very important for promo seed. But in the end, I kept it. When I left the bathroom, Rhonda was waiting for me in the hall, her hands disappearing into the sleeves of her sweater like a little girl. It's going well, she said, keeping her voice down. It's going so well. Congratulations, I whispered. We both stood there smiling at each other in the hallway, both caught in the planet gravity of the people around the holiday table in the next row. Fucked up elliptical moons free falling together somehow. Disallowed from helping with dishes or cleanup, I haunted the fire like a coat rack. But Linda washed, Desi dried, Dino lay on the couch under a blanket. Rhonda and her dad held court in the main room, Rhonda sitting in a kitchen chair next to Redacted's recliner. If Redacted still felt as he had on the day he had kicked Rhonda out, he wasn't showing it, at least not for today, and I supposed it was up to him and her to decide tomorrow. Both of them faced the TV on the wall to which Rhonda had wired up her NES. She mapped dungeons while her dad powered through the early game. Is this the place with the fucking knights, he growled, sailing to an island dungeon on a log raft. This is the place with the wizards, Rhonda said. You always forget the order, and you didn't even get the white sword. What is wrong with you? I don't need the white sword to bring the pain, Redacted said. Okay, I'm gonna skip a little bit ahead. We made it, I cheered at Rhonda once we were in the car, speeding back to Truth and Consequences and safety. Congratulations. Now I need to buy 2 packs of cigarettes and a bottle of wine immediately. Rhonda drove for a little while in silence. That was nice, she finally said. I was expecting that to go so shitty, and it turned out to be really okay. It did, I said. I mean, don't count your chickens, but it seemed like you and your dad had a really nice time. What do you mean, don't count your chickens, she said. I mean, everyone's nice once in a while, I said. She frowned so hard she swerved a little under the shoulder. Are you talking about my family, she asked? Or maybe are you just talking about how you are? I leaned back. Which is it? Rhonda challenged. I tried to focus enough to answer her. It was difficult to know what to say that would not make the situation worse. Why would you say that to me? I finally asked. Why did you say that about my family? She asked. In fact, why are you saying anything? You're right, I said. Let's call a moratorium on human speech right now. With this, I made the zip lips motion and I drug the promo CD that I had stolen and shoved it into Rhonda's car stereo. A moment of glorious vocal harmony before Rhonda pushed eject. She snatched the CD, squinted at the print of a label. What the fuck, she said. Where did this come from? Oh, maybe I found it, I said. I don't know, in your brother's bag in the bathroom, maybe. Rhonda pushed on the brake. The aging discs clamped and squealed against the tires as the car dragged itself to a stop. We were just alongside white sands. Over the ridge, crossing floodlights washed over the sky in a man-made aurora, painting out the campfires with stars. We have to take this back to my brother-in-law right now, she said, jaw firmly set. No, we don't. I said, why would that even occur to you? She put her key, a fluorescent anime princess chain dangling into the ignition, but I grabbed her knuckles and kept her from turning it. You fucking bitch, let me go, she said viciously. I can't believe you stole from my family. Desi's a jerk, I said. I mean, he seems nice and all. They all do, that's what I'm saying. But like, girl, they kicked you out. They're planning to steal your brother away to some rehab facility. They could barely even call you by your name. I want them to fucking love me, okay? Got it. Almost wailed. And I started laughing. I don't know why. At this, Rhonda grew silent, wrapped up in herself like a flesh straitjacket, staring at the asphalt and the floodlights. I let go of her hand. The keychain dangled freely against the car. Her emotions flickered against me, drying out all the moisture inside of me, curling me up into leather and ash. Families tear you up little by little, I told her, for years. And it'd be so easy to get free. Just push on the gas. Just keep driving this way. Everything will become very clear, like a big sheet of paper. She didn't say anything, and I reached out to touch her on the shoulder. Don't touch me right now, she said. Whatever you say, I said, slumping into my seat. After a moment, she spoke again. You never talk about your family. And I never will. There was another period of silence. So do you just leave people who aren't as cool as you or who make you sad, she asked. Is that what you're going to do to me sometime? I recoiled. That's not fair, I said. It's not like we're dating or anything. What the fuck does it have to do with anything? Whether we're dating, she shouted. Where did that even come from? Just because we're not dating, we're not connected? I opened the door lock, swung my legs out and hesitated. Then I hit eject on the promo CD, grabbed its silver rainbow tongue from the dashboard and shoved it into my purse before getting out of Rhonda's sedan and beginning to walk. I walked along, in the shadow of a vast military installation. Only desert floodlights, and a chain fence to keep me out. A distant, unseen flag that protected me from infinite dirt, carnivores, and silence. I took comfort from that presence, from that and the CD in my purse. For a moment, they seemed to be one and the same. Rhonda pulled alongside me. She leaned on the horn and rolled down her window at me. "What are you even doing?" she shouted. "I'm confiscating the CD," I said back. "You can't be trusted with it." "You can't walk back from here," she shouted. "It's 1,000,000 miles of desert. You don't know anything about geography. It's maybe 100 or so miles of desert as well. Have fun with your stupid life." I kept walking, but she kept driving behind me, close enough for me to feel heat on the back of my leggings from her lamps. "Take my advice," I kept praying. "Take my advice. Leave me alone." Finally, I turned and glared at her, the sedan bearing down on me. "Go away," I said. "Please get back in the car." "This is how you disconnect from toxic people," I said. "I'm modeling good behavior for you." "I'm not going to leave you in the desert alone," she said. "I don't even like you," I shouted. "I don't like you either," she shouted back. She sounded as if she were crying again. This stopped me. I stood there, facing the blinding high beams that hid another person behind them, the desert haloing out. And I thought about Rhonda sitting on the arm of her dying father's recliner, telling him he was really bad at Zelda. Two faces growing stupider together over video games in a wash of cathode light. This is what did it. I tried to keep walking, but it seemed pointless to go anywhere or to stay upright. Carefully, I sat down in the sand and brushed at the shoulder of the road, abandoning my purse beside me to darkness and scorpions. I sat there staring into the headlights until Rhonda's shadow crossed and broke them. She sat beside me and put a hand on my shoulder this time carefully, like I might suddenly scratch her hard enough to break her skin. Or maybe it was just me who was afraid of that. Thank you all. Thank you for bearing with these. Your belief is sure. Thank you all. Sit down. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. And yes, take a look around, buy some books, chat. I think. Thank you. Thanks to everyone who joined us online.